Fantastic. Best of luck with you for the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Good to hear from Connor. So there's the reason why he didn't come yesterday. He wasn't here. He was doing exams. We've also got Oliver Norris, who finished on the podium in seniors at Genk, who's not here this weekend because he's got exams. So it's good to see the parents and the family and the drivers themselves remembering to not just put everything into racing, but to also remember the long term, the future, and to concentrate on their school and their exams. So well done to them. So what a terrific effort that was, Ken, from Connor Jupp, having not really been on the track at all, apart from for a few laps of warm-up, to do that.
Missing 15 free practice sessions on Wednesday and Thursday, as well as the qualifying. Excellent showing by Connor.
So here we go then, Ken. We've got the grid up for our second race of the day. It's back to seniors. So
yeah, well, Philip Morin starting this one on pole alongside Karol Dabski. Karol, who's been with us for 7 or 8 seasons. Jack Weprin, who I mentioned, with Nicky Tihonen on row 2. Arvo Talvar and Charlie Turner on row 3. They come round to start the second of their formation laps. Behind Arvo Talvar and Charlie Turner, it's Randy Berglis and Santeri Kallio. And the top 10 completed by Tobias Holm and Ed Brand. Now, keep an eye on Ed Brand, kart number 202. So often, he's teased us in the commentary box by appearing to be off the pace, telling us that he's not at 10 tenths, as it were, but rarely turning in a dud effort. And I think our pictures are showing you that it is just getting a little drier. Keep making the phrase, not a dry line, but a drier line emerging. And although we got a little bit of sideways and a little bit of contact at the very, very start of Heat 1, we certainly had some good racing later on and some good fast racing too. Well, Philip Morin has made the transition to seniors very, very strongly. Karol Dabski, always a good qualifier, doesn't always give perhaps justice to the way that he can drive fast in qualifying when it comes to the racing, but hopefully putting that right here in Italy. Philip Morin on pole, Karol Dabski joining him on the front row. Jack Weprin and Nicky Tihonen, row 2. Arvo Talvar and Charlie Turner, row 3. Randy Bergles and Santeri Kallio, row 4. Tobias Holm and Ed Brand, row 5. It's Heat 2, Group C and D and Seniors. 10 laps, here we go. And that's a much better start by... Oh, and already there's some sort of contact there between Philip Morin and Karol Dabski, with Philip looking over to the side there. Not the drivers who you see on the screens as being out of the race. Kart 206, Philip Morin is still in the lead. Karol Dabski in kart number 241 still in second place. And I think that may be Charlie Turner that I saw momentarily in third place. No, not necessarily so. Well, it was contact in about the opening 50 metres, but I have to say it was incidental. I don't think there was anything deliberate. Philip Morin looking over to the left as he made the exit, just making sure he didn't get a jump start. He had actually got a very, very clean start, and that's rewarded by the lead. Just trying to identify the driver in second place. Think it could... Well, no. Don't let's start talking about think. Let's call it when we know who it is. Just also, we will bring you when the drivers go through, or when the screen rolls through at the end of the opening lap, who those drivers were that we lost. Well, kart 206, Philip Morin, it was Ed Brand. Well, apologies to all of Ed Brand's fans. I didn't spot that it was Ed. We did say, don't be fooled by that position on the outside of row 5. Keep an eye on Ed Brand. And right now, he's the guy putting pressure on race leader Philip Morin. Third place, Karol Dabski.
One of the big names that got caught up in that pilot, though, was Arvo Talvar, the Estonian driver who got on the podium at Genk. He's in the top 3 in the championship. He's second in the championship, in fact. But Arvo Talvar is out of the race by the looks of things. He hasn't come through at the end of lap number 1. He started on the third row of the grid, and it was just about there where they all got caught out. So we've also lost the 259 kart of Max Remberg. He was a lot further back. He was 19th. So those are the two that haven't come through. But there were, 12 karts caught up in that pretty huge pile-up near the start of the race. Tobias Holm got caught up in it as well, the Danish driver in kart 263.
The Canadian, Zach Clement de Mello also. Right. It's a shame that his first visit to the series put him in that difficult position.
That's right, it was the middle of the grid, wasn't it? The middle of the pack that got caught out. Meanwhile, the rest of the field come through. Philip Moran leading the way in the Dan Holland racing kart, but you've got Ed Brand there, the intrepid driver, program run driver, the former British champion, trying to get alongside now on the way out of turn 3 into turn 4. A mistake from the race leader. Philip Moran goes all over the curbs. He's very, very slippy on the curbs. He loses all of his traction, and Ed Brand goes through. So Ed Brand on through into the lead of the race for the first time. And now Eddie's having to defend, though, on the back straight. You can't see it on screen yet if you're watching online, but you'll see it very soon as they go through. I think Ed just about hung on to the lead of the race, though, but only just. Morani's there, and Karol Dabski still doing a very good job there in third place.
Chris, you mentioned that in that lead change, Philip Moran getting himself all over the curb. I have to say, I'd got my eyes on that through our commentary box window. I put all of that down to the pressure that Ed Brand was applying. Driving a really, really tight, fast line was Ed Brand. Philip had to do some sort of defending, thought that he was going to defend the line Ed was on, got himself marginally out of shape, and actually Ed increases his lead, and Karol Dabski beginning to put a bit of pressure, looking for that second place from Philip Moran. Brian Ayrton, the Dutchman, going through fourth, and Kallio the Finn in fifth place.
Yeah, looking good for the third place driver. Karol Dabski is definitely closing in, although he makes a mistake now on the way to turn 3. They're all running onto that curb. If you venture over the curb, there's a big puddle, so you're putting yourself at risk doing that. You're certainly losing traction. Ed Brand very smooth, but again, at the end of the back straight there, all the way to turn 9, he is caught up by Philip Moran, the former race leader. Philip was on fine form. Really, really well he went in his heats in Genk. He never made the podium in the pre-final or the final, but he looked like one of those drivers that was going to challenge for a win. It didn't quite work out for him in the point-scoring races. He is still well up there, though, and Philip is taking that form into this race.
Roles reversed. He's really putting the pressure on Ed, isn't it? Although, dare I say it, Ed looking less susceptible to the pressure than Philip was.
That's right. Well, Ed's been around, hasn't he? Been around the block a few times in Euro Challenge, been a front runner in that, been a front runner in the British Championships. Totally different lines there. Look through the final corner, tight for Ed Brand, out very, very wide for Philip Moran in second place. There is a tendency when it's very wet to run away from the inside of the line, away from the racing line, offline, wider, where there are less puddles and where there's been less rubber, because the rubber that's laid down in dry conditions, when it rains, that can get very slippery sometimes. So that's why you see drivers taking odd lines, because it's actually more slippy on the traditional racing line, and sometimes there are less puddles there. But Ed Brand's tight line, to be fair, seems to be working for him, and he's half a second clear at the start of the lap, but again, in the middle of the lap, Philip Moran is stronger, Ken.
Yeah, as you made the point previously, that's a very long back straight. The technical sections, very, very different to those long straight sections. We saw it with Max Verstappen in the early race with Peter Betzel, just the same now, and that's just one of those beautiful little ingredients that makes the mix so difficult to predict in advance, if you will, and gives us such good racing. Having said all of that, all of a sudden, that's a very, very surprising sight, because we've got a back mark away in front of Ed and Philip. Let me try and identify. It's kart 206. Well, kart 206, that's a surprise, because Philip Moran's lead, 2.09 seconds. I didn't see on screen just how that gap emerged.
No, Ed Brand's obviously had a mistake somewhere, hasn't he? I mean, looked fairly comfortable. He had a very slow lap there. He should be lapping in the 1 minute 8. He did a 1 minute 11. So Ed Brand, having either a problem or more likely a mistake in the wet conditions here, has lost the leads of the race to Philip Moran. Karol Dabski there in third position still. Then in fourth position, having a very good run, is Brian Ayrton. Brian has come up to fourth place, having started the race back in 16th position. Santeri Kallio is there in fifth place, and Nicholas Tihonen the French driver who started on the second row of the grid. He's rounding out the top 6 at the moment. The big news from the start of the race, that big pile-up we had, was that the driver third in the championship after the first round, the Estonian Arvid Talvar, is one of the 2 drivers that didn't make it around at the end of lap number 1. We've also had a problem for Max Weinzel, the Austrian driver, was just on the fringes of the top 10, but he's dropped down to 25th now, so I suspect he's been off the road somewhere.
I think he got caught. There were about 5 drivers pretty much going into the back straight side by side. One who just got a clip, and I think Maxi Weinzel may have been the one. We're into the second half of the race because this is halfway round lap 7 of a 10-lap race. Philippe Morin's lead. Have to say that when I saw the massive margin there, I think I called in commentary, it's a back marker. I couldn't believe the distance. Our television screen foreshortens it a little bit, but that's about 60 metres. I couldn't tell you in kart lengths. I can tell you in time terms that Philippe Morin had 2.9 seconds on Ed Brand, which is just mega. Very, very hard to place how that had unfolded, but there was obviously an instant. Maybe Sarah will find that out a little later on. A newcomer in round 1 at Genk, the Aberdeenshire lad Kyle Fowley, going well again in his first race in round 2, into the top 10 at number 8. Don't think I saw him on screen. I did see Antoine Bouton on screen. Been a little bit disappointing in the earlier stages, but driven into the top 10 in 9th position as we speak. But Philippe Morin's lead is just getting wider and wider. 3.27 seconds. I think maybe there's a setup situation that Philip has got his finger on, and that's why the advantage is as wide as it is, Chris.
Yeah, it's quickest man on circuit by some distance, 4/10 quicker than Ed Brand on that lap. So it seems that his kart seems to be working better as the track begins to dry out, and maybe he set it up and set the tyre pressures up in mind that he might not be quite on the pace at the start of the race, but it would come good in the middle of the race and at the end of the race, which is exactly what has happened. And Ed Brand now 3.2 seconds back, only half a second or so clear of Karol Dabski in 3rd place. You mentioned Kyle Fowley, who's doing tremendously well again in his debut season in the Euro Challenge. The young Scottish driver has come from 21st on the grid here after a slightly disappointing qualifying yesterday. He's come from 21st up to 8th place. Carl was one of the drivers that really impressed Ken and myself in the opening rounds at Genk in his Euro Challenge debut, his first full season of Euro Challenge. He qualified brilliantly well, did really well in the heats, was right up there, up in the top 3. But he was ill on the Sunday morning, and he had to miss the pre-final. Which was a real shame. So he then didn't score any points for the pre-final, and then he had to start the final at the back of the grid. And you know what? Kyle Fowley came from the back of the grid to finish in 5th place. So Kyle in kart 225, definitely one to watch. Right, we've got 2 laps, less than 2 laps to go now. Philippe Morin well clear, 3.5 seconds clear of Ed Brand, and Karol Dabski is beginning to close the gap to Ed now in 3rd place, and he's still got time here, Ken, to nick 2nd position.
Yeah, I have to say, I have been guilty, if you will, of highlighting the fact that Karol Dabski qualifies well, often then doesn't deliver in racing, but this has been a good race by the pole, and you cannot say that 2nd place is out of the question. I was thinking of that just moments ago before you'd said it. Unless Philip does something dramatically wrong, this is home and dry for him. But Ed Brand and Karol Dabski still giving us a scrap for 2nd and 3rd place, just trying to pick up where they are on screen. Wasn't able to identify, see where they are on track. Well, maybe that gap is just a little bit too wide now, because as Philippe Morin looks over his right shoulder, he sees Ed Brand, and between Ed Brand and Karol Dabski is about 8 kart lengths, and Brian Earden, the much improved Dutchman, probably closer to Karol Dabski than Karol Dabski is to Ed Brand. To call them home on the final lap, Chris Hartley.
Yeah, the one to watch actually is 3rd and 4th, because Brian Earden has started flying at the end of the race in the 216 kart. He's almost onto the tail now of Karol Dabski. Karol a little bit tighter through the first sequence of corners. We've also got 5th and 6th running nose to tail now. Charlie Turner has got Nicholas Tehonen on his tail. Nicholas was quick enough in the dry to qualify very well inside the top 6. I think he was the top Frenchman across all the classes yesterday. And I think a change for 5th at the end of the back straight. Nicholas Tehonen has just dived at the inside of Charlie Turner. So a change for 5th position. It's all looking comfortable for Philippe Morin on this final lap of the race. Meanwhile, the leader just under 3.5 seconds clear of Ed Brand. Then you got this battle between Karol Dabski and Brian Earden for the final spot in the top 3. Dabski just about hanging on to it when last we saw them, but there's the race leader going into the final turn now. Terrific drive this by Philippe Morin, particularly the second half of the race, which he's dominated. Ed Brandy's going to hang on to second place. Karel Dabski, in the end, does hold on to third position. He was under a lot of pressure from Brian Eden at the start of the lap, but Brian Eden fell away towards the end of the lap. And then after that change at the end of the back straights, Nicholas Tahonen bringing it home for 5th place, having got ahead of Charlie Turner with half a lap to go. Carl Fowley picks up another place at the end of the race. The Scottish driver was charging from 21st. He finishes 7th. Terrific effort by him to do that. And then we had Lorenzo Scatigna, one of the Italian drivers that's joined us this weekend. He drives for Motor One. Scatigna in 8th place. Then we had Carlio and Barthon rounding out the top 10. So Philippe Maran, the fastest time there for the race winner, with a 1 minute 8.797. Most of the others were in the 109s, 110s and 1 minute 11s. So terrifically quick running from them. Just to give you a clue of how wet it is, in qualifying yesterday, Harry Webb in the senior category was just over the 49-second barrier. So they are a good 9-10 seconds slower than they were in the ideal dry conditions yesterday. There's the results then. 20 seconds rather, 20 seconds slower. Philippe Morin, Dan Holland's racing driver, taking the win now. I think he just eased up a bit at the end, but he was 3.5 seconds clear for much of that race. Ed Brands, then Karel Dabski, 2nd and 3rd. Brian Eden was 4th. Nicholas Tahonen had a slightly iffy start to the race, but he came back strongly and came back through the finish drive to finish in 5th place. Charlie Turner in 6th place. Carl Fowley with a great drive, 14 places gained to 7th place. Lorenzo Scatigna, the best home-based driver, the Italian, in 8th. Santero Callio 9th. Antoine Barthon 10th. Nicola Shiro, Randy Berglass, Anthony Tack, Tobias Holm, who got caught up in the middle of the pack, and Filippo Laghi 14th and 15th. So that's how they finished. The track now definitely beginning to dry up.
Sorry, Sarah, you're breaking up.
Still quite a few puddles offline. Still very, very wet grass. But it is drying up all the time. And it'll be good to get an insight into what it's like out there from Ed Brand. Ed is now talking to Sarah Dryhurst, having finished second in the race, in which she fell back a bit towards the end of the race. Over to Sarah.
I'm here with Ed Brand. Now, Ed, you started off in 10th. You came all the way through up to first and then maintained a second place finish.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't too sure what to do at the start, so I just sort of went, I tried something. It worked. I think I came out of the first corner in 4th or something, and just made a few positions. Got into the lead, kept the lead for a few laps, and I went down into the back corner down there and just locked the front brake and went straight off. Fortunately, I didn't lose any. I lost one position. I then managed to maintain that. I had a little battle with Dabski in the end, but in the last few laps, I managed to get a little gap and hold second.
So fantastic qualifying for you. What's the plan now?
Just keep doing that, hopefully.
Quite straightforward then. Just go out there and try the same again. As you said, you started with a new idea, something new to start then.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm starting on the inside next time, so that may be a bit more difficult to try, but just got to try these things, didn't you? Can only go wrong.
Fantastic. Best of luck with you for the rest of the day.
Cheers, thank you.
Thanks to Ed, thanks to Sarah. Good to hear from Ed Brand there. Made that terrific start to get for a while into the lead of the race. Ended up in second place. But yeah, very chirpy, Ed, and keep trying things out. They are going to... I mean, it's a bit of a nightmare scenario, this, for the teams, because you don't know what the weather's going to do. You don't know if it's going to rain again, or the clouds coming in. Are they going to start thinking about dry setups? They're going to be watching the track all the time and leaving their decision as late as they possibly can. So, whereas normally they would like to get on with getting the kart set up and tweaking it for the next race, to a point, the teams and the mechanics are going to have to hang fire because of the changeable weather, because it's either going to dry up now or the rain is going to come again. So no point in getting everything ready for one setup or the other, and then it changes 15 minutes before your race, 20 minutes before your race. So they're going to leave it as late as they can. But yeah, good performance there by Philippe Morin and Ed Brand to finish first and second, and Karel Dabski third place in that race. We're going to move on now to juniors very shortly. Our first two junior races coming up now for the 13 to 15 year olds. 13 to 15 being the main age bracket, although you can actually start in juniors if you're 12 years old, as long as you're 13 at some point during the course of the season. These are lighter karts, about 20 kilograms lighter than the seniors, with driver on board, 147 kilograms, all running on Mojo tyres. The tyre used by all the classes here in the Euro Rotax Max Challenge. Of course, they'll be on the wets, the W2 type wet tyres now for these races. And we've had news from Sarah Dryhurst, who's down there in the assembly area, to say that all the drivers that are coming out for this next race have remained, as far as we can tell, on wet tyres. So just over 10 minutes before the next race starts, the juniors, just to refresh what happened in the first round at Genk. If you've not been following, if you're joining us for the first time at RGMMC TV, or you're here at the circuit and you've just come to watch and you weren't necessarily at Genk at the first round in Belgium, then in the juniors, Lando Norris was the driver to beat. He leads the championship, having won the pre-final and the final, so he got a maximum of 89 points. Connor Hall second in the championship, and Jack Bartholomew third. So British drivers first, second and third. The grid is now up on screen for you for this next race. And Jack Bartholomew, one of the drivers in the top three, one of the drivers who went very well at Genk, was quickest yesterday. So Jack just nipping ahead of Thomas Preining. Tommy Preining, the Austrian driver, who runs a Tony Kart chassis, looked like he was going to get pole position. Then Jack, right at the end of the session, put in his best lap time and just about managed to get ahead of the Pro Train racing driver. So Jack for Coles Racing on pole position for this one. Thomas Preining is going to start second on the grid. Guan Yu Zhu, the Chinese-born but British-based now driver for Strawberry Racing, starts third on the grid in kart number 8. If you want to watch the numbers, Jack Bartholomew, the pole position driver, is number 40. Thomas Preining, second on the grid. The Austrian is number 12. Guan Yu Zhu is number 8. Going very well in the first round at Genk, 8th in the championship last year. And the championship leader, Lando Norris, number 52, starts on the second row of the grid. He starts 4th. Marino Sato, number 85, and Jack McCarthy, number 44, are on row 3. On row 4, number 80, Richard Verschaw, and Berke Besler, the Turkish driver, number 33. And then completing the top 10, we got number 78, Lars Lamberel, and Jay Nijar, number 17. So that's the top 10, but we have got 27 karts out there in total. And so Lando Norris, not quite as good in qualifying as he was at Genk, but still a very good effort. He was, I think, third fastest in qualifying at Genk. And he was in the top 6. He finished in 6th position. He was only about 0.2 of a second away from getting pole, but so tight was it that he ended up 6th fastest overall, behind Jack Bartholomew, Thomas Preining, Connor Hall, Josh Price, and Guan Yu Zhu. So they are on the seconds of their formation laps now, and they'll just be inspecting the circuit, really, just getting a feel, Ken, for if there's any surface water and where the grippier parts might be.
Just looking out the commentary box window moments ago, I was thinking to myself, for the first time, there are parts of the track that are very clearly dry. Not just the drier line I've been talking about, but dry. And another formation lap. This is an aborted start. We're not racing. An aborted start. We go round again.
That's right, yeah. The start line official not happy that they were all bunched up together. It's a rolling start. It's up to the front two drivers to control the pace. Hello. Lando Norris has popped up ahead of Thomas Preining. What's going on there? He should be behind the number 12 car. And Tommy Preining looks to be out of position at the moment. Lando Norris has sort of gone to the front of the field here, whereas he should be starting third. So they're sorting themselves out now down the back straight. Lando has fallen back into third position, but for a time there, they were all out of sync, the top three. So hopefully they'll bunch them up better this time. They were pretty good at getting the starts underway at Genk first time round. We had a few that got sent round again. Obviously, you've got to be fair to those in the middle of the pack and the back of the pack for them to be close enough to the front of the field to have a go here. So the ones we're watching for at the front, number 40, Jack Bartholomew, fastest of anybody in qualifying, but in dry qualifying conditions yesterday. It's very different now with this damp, drying track as it's become. We haven't really had any rain for about an hour and a half, 2 hours now. But with the karts now coming out, it was only really in warm-up that we had the rain. once warm-up finished, the rain stopped. And now that the carts are going round in anger in race formation, they're starting to mop up a lot of surface water. Not quite a dry line yet, but it's drying all the time. And this 10-lap race is about to get underway then. Can Jack Bartholomew with the green helmet there, the inside line, hold on to the lead of the race? He's coming under attack here. Thomas Prining trying it around the outside. Thomas going very wide. Lando Norris has taken a tight line, and I think he's going to squeeze for second. There's been a change for lead. Guan Yu Zhu has got the lead of the race out of turn 2. Jack Bartholomew slips back to third. Lando Norris gets through to second place as well. So Guan Yu Zhu, and then Lando Norris goes for the inside line and gets through. Back into the lead. Well, into the lead for the first time he goes. Jack Bartholomew goes with him, and Guan Yu Zhu goes from third to first and back to third after all of that. So down the back straight for the first time they come. On the brakes, Lando Norris almost off screen there. He's almost in France, so wide does he goes on the way into that turn. And very different line from Lando. He comes back onto the circuit, and it worked for him because out of the corner, look, he's got the lead of the race, and he's begun to pull away, but he slips a bit on the way into the first hairpin. Has to drag it back onto the circuit, taking this wide line. The only disadvantage to that, it does seem to be the better line, but the disadvantage, you leave the door wide open, and it's so tempting for the others behind to try and throw one up the inside. And see top of screen there into the second hairpin. Somebody's gone off onto the grass and dropped back a fair way, but I don't think it was one of our front runners. Still going. Lando Norris then with the commanding first lead. Jack Bartholomew at the end of lap number 1 in second place. He's been first, second and third in that lap, but he ends up second. Guan Yu Zhu comes through next, and then it's in fourth place. Prining ends up fifth, so Tommy Prining dropped from the front row of the grid down to fifth place there. Burke Besler running in sixth position, and all the front runners I think still there or thereabouts. The one that seems to have dropped back a fair few places is Jane Najar, number 17, who started in the top 10 but has dropped down to 16th place now in the number 17 car. But Lando Norris, despite all of that battling, despite only getting the lead half a lap into that first lap, Ken, ended up with a 1.5 second lead.
Yeah, there was a reason for that, you know, Chris. You were talking in commentary about how he went for that big, wide, sweeping line, which obviously left a barn door on the inside for people to go through if they wish. But when Lando exited, he cut right across the bows of the guys. Legitimately, no contact, didn't cause any real problem. But the end result was that going the long way round, he was very much the faster out of the circuit. And as you can see, it was 1.5 of a second at the end of that previous lap. This time at the start of lap 3, it's been reduced to 9/10 of a second, so maybe Jack Bartholomew just reeling him in a little bit. Guan Yu Zhou a similar length behind in third place. Have to say that the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 have got themselves a fair bit detached from the 6th place driver. Dennis Becker's just getting a little bit out of shape there in kart 47, coming under pressure from Lars Lamberel, fellow Dutchman. I thought I was going to be saying Lars Lamberel going up from 7th to 6th, but Becker's just holding him off. But that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the evidence of the timing is that Jack Bartholomew took 6/10 of a second off Lando Norris. This is only lap 3. And there's plenty still to come. Just looking out the window, confirmation, 5 laps remaining, including the one that they're on. And just trying to get my fix on the circuit as well as on screen. And Jack Bartholomew, well, there's no question about it. Much, much, much closer to Lando now. And Lando making almost a 90-degree right-angle turn. Coming round to start lap 4. It was 0.9 of a second. It's now 0.6 of a second. And the evidence of our eyes and the evidence of the timing screen is that Jack Bartholomew is reeling in the race leader, Lando Norris.
Yeah, Lando Norris there, running for RL Racing Department. Jack Bartholomew for Coles Racing. My former National Championship frontrunner Adrian Coles hasn't raced for a while, but busy running teams these days. Jack, a very tall driver, in fact. Lando's, they're almost polar opposites. Lando's quite a small driver, quite short, and almost the ideal size, really, for a racing driver, for a car racer. Jack is much, much taller. In fact, he was the tallest of anybody that we interviewed at the end of yesterday from the Pole Cities. He was taller than the two seniors. So you can't really necessarily tell that from when he sat in the car. But as you say, he's well over 6 foot now, despite being, 14 years old. So he's closing the gap. It was a better lap from Jack Bartholomew. He was 3/10 quicker on that lap. So he brings the gap down. No, he was 7/10 quicker on that lap. So he halves the gap, actually, down to 6/10 of a second. Guan Yu Zhu just keeping a watchful eye on them in third. How about fourth place? Fourth is slightly quicker than him. Dennis Tice is a bit quicker. Tommy Prining there in fifth place is not quite hanging on to the top four. So we're getting a warning now from the officials. It's number 59 that's getting a warning.
Janis Slavinsky of Belarus, the first ever driver from Belarus to race in the series. Janis Slavinsky picking up a driving standards flag. Chris, if I may say, the start of that race, there was a lot of contact between a lot of drivers, including the front runners, and I was wondering if the officials would take a closer look at that. We haven't heard of any driving standards flag. That doesn't stop a review afterwards, but interesting to see how the officials determine that. It is, of course, difficult conditions. The drying track can be a lot harder than the absolutely wet track, but just want to retain in the back of our mind.
Yeah, worth making the point that the officials, the stewards, all are watching in race control, watching these pictures, and they're able to review and replay them if there are any incidents. And it was used a few times as a system in Genk, and a few penalties because of it were awarded, were confirmed by it. The gap from third to fourth was coming down at the start of that lap, but I think it's opened up again now. Guan Yu Zhu pulling back away from Dennis Tice, and yes, Guan actually about 3/10 quicker on that lap. So Guan Yu Zhu, number 8, pulling away in third place from number 38. Dennis Tice in fourth. They're all quicker than Tommy Prining in fifth place. He's fallen back by about nearly 4 seconds now from that lead group. It's Dennis Beckers and Lars Lambrell next up in 6th and 7th positions. Jay Nijar, having had that bad first lap where he got caught out by a bit of bumping and boring, I think. Jay Nijar, number 17, he's back up now into the top 10. So the British driver, the Chris Rogers Motorsport Run driver on the Tony kart, doing a good job to gain something like 7 places since his disappointing first lap. Now you can see the race leader, red kart, bright yellow helmet, the RL Racing driver, Lando Norris. He's the championship leader. He's got a maximum point score at the moment because he won the pre-final and he won the final at Genk. So he's got 89 points in the championship, which he leads coming into this second of 4 rounds from Connor Hall, who's going to be in the next race. He's got 85. And Jack Bartholomew, who's second in this race, he's third in the championship on 79 points. Through they go to complete the 6th of 7 laps in this race. 1.1 seconds the gap now between the top 2. And Lando is just controlling things from the front, Ken, as you taught them home on the final lap.
Looks all very easy, doesn't it? 1.119 seconds. Have to say that with a lap to go, that you would settle for. But Jack Bartholomew had drawn in Lando Norris to the tune of about 0.6 of a second at one point. But that did look rather like a mid-race breather rather than anything more dramatic than that. Just looking a little bit further down, have to say, not sure why Slavinsky got that driving standards flag. He's way down at the back anyway. Nobody seems to be near him. Can't quite imagine what must have happened, but hey, the rules are the rules, whether you're at the front or the back. Lando Norris from Jack Bartholomew. Guan Yu Zhou, dare I say it, looking safe. Let's use the word relatively safe in that third place. Lando Norris in view on your screens. Well, actually just going off view now. Just one final right-hander to negotiate. He negotiates that right-hander, and coming home to take the victory is Lando Norris. Lando Norris wins it. There's the checkered flag. Jack Bartholomew, the pole sitter, in second place. Guan Yu Zhou, the Chinese Brit, shall we call him that, in third place. Dennis Tice of Holland, fourth. Tommy Prining of Austria, fifth. Lars Lambrell, the Dutchman, good drive by Lars, into 6th place. He had a good scrap with Dennis Beckers, fellow Dutchman, who came 7th. Christensen, Denmark, 8. Timmermans, Belgium, 9. And Jay Nijar, the driver from the UK, completing the top 10. Lando Norris's winning margin 0.95 of a second as they leave the circuit to the right of your screen on RGMMC TV. But in the end, I think we would have to review and say that taking the lead in the first quarter of the first lap, Lando Norris pretty much in control of that throughout.
And Sarah Dryhurst, fresh from the track, has managed to grab Jack Bartholomew, who finished second in that race. So it's here now from Jack, down with Sarah.
I'm here with Lando Norris, who's had a fantastic race. Really well done, Alan.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a good start, which was the main thing because I started 4th on the outside. I got through to first and managed to just to keep my pace. And I think I started to pull away, but I wasn't sure if Jack was catching me much, so I just kept it calm and make sure I didn't spin.
So a calm head and a good race for you. Really well done, Lando. We'll see you later. I'm just going to walk back and see if I can catch up with Jack. Jack, you put up a fight, certainly. You maintained second. A consistent race for you then.
Yeah, well, I got a bit of a nudge at the start, so I missed the first corner and I got overtaken by 4. Managed to get into third, and then I overtook Joe back and got into second. But I was catching Lando, and then we had an electrical problem. It was misfiring, so I lost loads of time down the straight, and then I caught him again, and it started misfiring again. But so we're going to have a little look and see if we can sort that out for the next one. But yeah, very pleased with that, nice and consistent.
Fantastic. Well, we'll speak to you later. We'll catch up and see how that's working out for you. Back to you guys.
Well, you know, if Jack Bartholomew had a little bit of a splutter and a misfire and still came home within 0.9 of a second of the winner, coming home in second place. Remember, Saturday is race day. It's accumulating points for the pre-final. And if there was a little bit of a problem, Jack's masked it very, very well indeed. Well, hopefully for him and for all his supporters, he does get it sorted. Well, we'll have a look now at the advertising brand on the telly. I was going to cue into the screen showing the final positions, but let me